This is Andi Purewal for Boxing News. I'm joined by promoter Eddie Hearn out here in a very hot and a very beautiful Florida. Eddie, always a pleasure. Before we come on to the obvious, how is life treating you?
Life is good. Mexico last week and just starting this big run of events. Obviously we have a huge show now, particularly in Orlando, and then Opataya Thompson next week and then Wood Warrington. So a lot coming up, but also a lot of big news dropping. Some big news for us as a business tomorrow. A big fight being announced this week as well, and press conferences to fit in. Looks like the Cameron Taylor press conference will be early next week in Dublin. We've got as well the Sonny Edwards BAM press conference tomorrow, so a lot of fun coming up.
It's a lot of fun indeed, but just kind of on more of a somber note, because we wasn't out in Mexico last week. We had that terrible news of Diego Arua's passing, the husband and trainer to Sabrina Perez. I just wanted to kind of reflect on that, just that entire scenario, Eddie. Obviously condolences towards Sabrina, her family, and obviously Diego's family and everybody who knew him as well.
Yeah, it was horrific. I think, what was it, like 20 seconds left of the fight. You know, I'm sitting here and Diego Arua is 6 feet from me, and just out of nowhere he falls off his stool and collapses. It was very hot in the arena, and the initial reaction is he's fainted. You know, as you'd expect, we stood up and the medics came straight over to help. The bell went for the end of the fight, and then when we turned round they were using the defibrillator on him, and you knew at that point, obviously, you know, it was a horrific situation. And the most heartbreaking thing was to see Sabrina Perez finish the fight and come to the apron and just have to stand and watch while that was happening to her husband, you know. And obviously she was in tears, and they got him on the stretcher and she followed him to the hospital with her boxing gloves on and everything. And, you know, I think I said in an interview that it's a shitty business, it really is, but when something like that terrible happens, everyone does come together, and I think it's really important that as boxing, we come together to help people when that happens. Nothing that we can do or anyone can do. You know, we've been making sure that we do as much for Sabrina on the ground as we can, and, you know, going through unfortunately the paperwork and making sure that we can get Diego back to Argentina and stuff like that. But nothing that you can do or say can really ever comfort anyone in that situation. So we need to make sure that we can, you know, help not just this week, but forever, to try and help with a legacy for those two. You know, when I was watching a broadcast back, I heard that Diego Arua and Sabrina Perez had just recently opened a gym in downtown near Buenos Aires, where they're from. And it was like they were so proud of that achievement, and it was there to help young kids from the area go there and stuff like that. And you know, it's just heartbreaking. So to see it unfold in front of you, to see the reaction from Sabrina, to know the grief that she must be feeling. I spoke to Maurizio Suleiman, and you know, we're going to make sure that hopefully that gym can continue the legacy that Diego Arua built. So condolences, and like I said, words can't really do anything. You just hope that God can give her strength at this time, because it's horrendous. And you know, our thoughts obviously with Sabrina and the entire family.
It was horrible news to wake up to over in the UK, and echo those words, thoughts and condolences to her family and everybody who knew Diego. But kind of moving forwards, we're here, we're in Florida. The big news which came out this morning, Conor Benn is returning to Eddie. I'm sure you're prepared for a number of questions surrounding that imminent return. So yeah, just walk me through firstly how it ended up being the Florida show that Conor's coming back to.
Yeah, so obviously, you know, when you got 2 or 3 weeks to plan and to go, you need a card that he can slot onto and fit onto. This was originally always the card that he was going to fight on. We spoke to the British Boxing Board of Control about potentially fighting on September 30th as well. We didn't get a no from them on that, but those conversations are ongoing, and also, which we'll come on to, about December as well. We decided to speak to the Texas State Athletic Commission, where Conor Benn is licensed, and the Florida State Athletic Commission. None of those were prepared to sanction a fight with Conor Benn if he was suspended or, you know, wasn't cleared to fight. So they spoke to the ABC. The ABC said he was suspended, and we need to speak to the British Boxing Board of Control and understand that he's no longer suspended and he is cleared to fight. The ABC spoke to the British Boxing Board of Control, who confirmed that he is cleared to fight. Ultimately, he's not suspended. Once they did that, Texas gave him approval to fight. Florida wanted to see his recent testing procedures, which has been multiple from VADA in the last 12 weeks, and requested an additional one with couriered results to come immediately, which took place last week. Those results came back this week to confirm that, again, he was negative as a part of that additional testing. Once they did that and he was cleared by the ABC, they were happy to sanction the fight. And that's where we are today. We were going to announce it yesterday, but we announced today, and he returns after 18 months out of the ring, and we can't wait.
Obviously, the word cleared certainly been a confusing one for many around the Conor case, Eddie. So
we keep talking about this. If you're cleared to fight, I mean, he's allowed to fight. He's cleared to fight. I don't understand why people can't get that into their brain.
Eddie, can he technically be cleared if obviously there's an appeal ongoing with the board and with the UKADs?
Absolutely. He's cleared to fight. Andy, if he wasn't cleared to fight, he wouldn't be allowed to fight. The ABC have had to rely on the information from the British Boxing Board of Control to confirm that he's cleared to fight. He's no longer suspended. We keep hearing about an appeal. We have no knowledge of that appeal. We have no date of that appeal. What do you expect him to do? That appeal could be next year. What, just sit there when he's cleared to fight? And, you know, I see a lot of stuff on Twitter and stuff like that. We had to go through a process with 4 commissions to make sure that they were comfortable for him to fight. The ABC of America, Texas, the British Boxing Board of Control, and Florida. And they've all confirmed, yes, he is clear to fight. And it really eats people up when they say, he's not cleared to fight. Of course he's cleared to fight. His suspension has been lifted. Now, if the board appeal, which we don't know, and when that might be, which we don't know, and he's then not cleared to fight, and he loses that case, he's not cleared to fight. But at the moment, he's clear to fight, and that's what he's going to do.
What's the legalities with that appeal, Eddie? Because I spoke to Tony last week, I spoke to Tony earlier as well, and he said to me that even though they said they was going to appeal it, they haven't actually put that in, and they seem to continue to be postponing their decision to appeal it. Can you tell me what the situation is?
All I know is that they said they would appeal, and I've heard nothing more of any potential date, any potential hearing, if that appeal is going through. I think, to be honest with you, like our aim, we're going to fight this weekend, and then we're going to put in a request to box in the UK in December. That's what we want to do. But obviously, the board at that point have a decision to make, because he is clear to box in the UK, whether they allow him to fight or he fights internationally again. So if they want to appeal, I don't have a problem with that. But what we can't do, having won the case, is just wait for them to make a decision, or wait for them to get a date or confirm whether they want to do it, because that could be next February or March. You know, he ain't boxed for a year and a half. He's been training every day for the last year. So I know it really gets at people when I say he's cleared to box, but if he's not cleared to box, he wouldn't be allowed to box this weekend. This isn't a clear to box in Florida. This is a clear to box by speaking to the British Boxing Board of Control to confirm that he's not suspended and clear to box.
So Eddie, could Conor, in a hypothetical world, then go and box in the UK but under a different licence if he wanted to?
If he wants to, same as Tyson Fury. But we don't want him to do that. We actually want him to have a British Boxing Board of Control licence. I don't believe that any British boxer, if they're fighting in the UK, should not fight under a British Boxing Board of Control licence. And I know there's a lot of them that don't. But and I don't mind saying it, my preference is after this fight, we go to British Boxing Board of Control and he applies for his licence. If that's not going to happen in time for the December fight, we'll do what Tyson Fury does, we'll do what a lot of other fighters do, which is to apply for permission to box in December. And it's up to the board. Again, legally, they can't stop him from fighting in the UK. He's cleared to box. Now, when that appeal takes place, or if it takes place, that's a separate issue. And if he was to ever lose a case, he's not cleared to box. But he won the case, and he's cleared to box. So, again, we'll have to see what happens with the appeal. But the career's back on track on Saturday, and enough is enough. Now, you have to let this kid fight. You have to let him return to, you know, also financially. He hasn't boxed for 18 months. I won't tell you the bills that he's had for this. Scientific reports, legal teams, appeal processes, hearings. It's time. And the time is Saturday, live on DAZN.
Eddie obviously saying he's been cleared to box. Has he been cleared of any wrongdoing?
Yeah, he's won the case. He's cleared to box. Again, when you say cleared of any wrongdoing, if you're not cleared of any wrongdoing, you're not cleared to box. You're suspended, you're banned, you're not. He's never been suspended, he's never been banned. He went through one hearing with the WBC, he was reinstated in the rankings. He went through another hearing with UKAD, who actually, you know, again, it's old news. Whether that was right or wrong going through that, he did that because that's what everyone wanted him to do. He won that case. You know, and I know no one's ever going to be happy, but we're very comfortable. Don't forget, we've seen this procedure over the last week play out with the ABC, with Texas, with Florida, with the British Boxing Board of Control. This wasn't, hi Florida, can we put Conor Benn on next week? And they went, yeah, no problem. You know, ultimately, everyone said no until the ABC were happy with correspondence and information from the British Boxing Board of Control, who ultimately have to confirm. And when that conversation happens with the ABC and the board, hi, is Conor Benn suspended with the British Boxing Board of Control? No, he's not. He's under no suspension with us at all. Okay, he's cleared to fight. And that's what they did. They told the other commissions, and on we go.
What's the purpose of the appeal then, Eddie? If he's not currently obviously suspended, as you say, what's the purpose from the board or UKAD for putting that appeal in if he's still allowed to continue to box?
Well, to stop him from boxing if that's what they want to do. I mean,
obviously that they disagree then with the outcomes of it.
If the appeal happens, yeah. I mean, they lost the case, but maybe they want to appeal the decision if that goes on, which they're able to do. If they disagree with the decision, maybe they go through with an appeal. If they don't, and they feel that it's time now for him to resume his career, having won effectively or been cleared from 2 cases, they do that. But again, we're not going to just sit for another 6 months, 8 months while we're waiting for people and appeals. He's won his case. He's ready to go.
One of the things people have been kind of critical of is the fact it's been announced so close to fight night. Can you explain as to why that is, or is it simply because of all the...
We made a decision last week, probably at the beginning of last week, for him to fight on this card. We spoke to all the governing bodies. They needed to speak to the British Boxing Board of Control. They needed to confirm he wasn't suspended. Florida wanted additional testing on Conor Benn, so they sent VADA to him straight away, and he had to do another test, which he's done multiple of during this 12-week period. And once they received those results, which were Monday, on top of the other results that he's done, they were happy. We were going to announce yesterday, but we announced today instead. So we only made the decision to fight probably middle of last week, and we only confirmed an opponent on Monday. Conor was happy to go straight into a big fight, but Tony said, you've been out for 18 months. Like, emotionally, mentally, you've been on the floor, so I really want you to fight. I mean, you better win, otherwise it'll be a right stinker.
Eddie, just with the VADA testing itself, obviously, I know you mentioned that Conor had to be tested prior to this fight. Was it a full board of testing, or would it have been...
Full board of testing.
Because that's obviously, for championship fights, it costs a lot more.
Yeah,
so
always for VADA as well. I mean, Conor Benn has had his own independent VADA testing. He's also had testing with the WBC during this period as well. So he's had multiple VADA tests during this period, and he had to have an additional test last week. That was the bigger reason for the delay, because Florida turned around and said, we've seen those results, no problem, but we want a test today as well. So he had to have an additional VADA test, of which we had to pay additional money for, with additional lab, to make sure that we got that within a week, because normally it could take 3 weeks for traditional testing. But full board, whatever you want to call it, VADA testing.
So obviously I imagine it costs more to have that full board as opposed to, say, testing for certain substances. So was that the only way that kind of would have been able?
The VADA testing, the wider VADA testing, covers for all those things that you're talking about when we do championship testing. That's across all our testings. No, we don't test for that, we don't test for that. That full board VADA testing is across all fighters that we implement and we pay for. The only thing that was different with Conor was having to pay for a faster testing procedure, which was additional money, as in the results, because Florida would not clear him to box. Even though he'd passed all these tests, they wanted one as of today. So we had to do an additional test last week, and it could have been announced last week, but we had to wait for those results to come through on Monday.
If Conor's to return in December after another junior fight, it's been mentioned, Eddie, with that in mind, are you hopeful, if the board has kind of given approval so that he isn't suspended on their behalf, that things could accelerate in a more positive sense for him to be able to get a licence with them to box back in the UK back in the year?
I mean, the fight's going to happen whether it's in the UK or whether it's internationally. I want the fight to happen in the UK. In December, Wembley Stadium, Cardiff, Millennium Stadium, one of those two. For that to happen, the board have to approve that fight, of which, again, with him not being suspended, very difficult for them not to approve that fight. But again, subject to if the appeal even happens, I don't know. But, you know, one thing, Andy, when you talk about all these people now who will come out and say, oh, this is disgrace. You know, people on behalf of Boxer and ultimately on behalf of Sky Sports have been making Chris Eubank Jr. offers and going behind our back to Conor Benn's team to try and make the fight for December. That's how bothered they are about the situation. So we live in a world of hypocrisy in boxing, but ultimately everybody would want to make the Eubank Benn fight. It is the biggest fight in British boxing outside of AJ against Fury, and it ain't even a million miles away from that. So our plan to win on Saturday night and go straight into that fight. Now, if Eubank doesn't want the fight, if he's not ready, if people are in his ear, if people are mucking him around, you know, people also need to understand, Eubank is not with Sky. Eubank is with Wasserman, and he's a network free agent. But at the moment, there's all these people in the ears of everybody trying to do this and trying to do that. Conor Benn has over 12 months left on his agreement with us, which he knows. He's got multiple fights left on his agreement. He knows exactly what he's doing. If other people want to come in and be part of the biggest fight in Britain and make a fortune, come join us. If not, we'll move on to another opponent. But our preference is Chris Eubank Jr. in December. But let's get Saturday out of the way first.
Just on Saturday, how did you land on his opponent?
We had multiple opponents. We found Orozco, who's what, 32-3. I watched him, Mexican, tough. Don't want anybody too dangerous, although I think he'll have a go, hoping that Conor can get some rounds. I've never seen Conor Benn look anything like this. I've been watching his sparring. It is the most frightening thing I've ever seen. So you better tune into DAZN on Saturday night and get ready for the comeback of Conor Benn.
I'm sure you're probably fed up talking about drug testing and just drugs and PED'S in the sport of boxing, Eddie, but I was going to get an update on Alycia Baumgardner. Anything you can fill us in on?
Nothing at all. I believe it's with the Massachusetts Commission who are doing their own investigation into that process, and that's what we want. We can't adjudicate over a decision, you know. So we need the commissions and the governing bodies to step up and handle that process. We've seen that with the New York State Athletic Commission with Joe Cusimano. We're seeing that now with the Massachusetts Commission and Alycia Baumgardner. Every fighter must get given their opportunity to explain their innocence, and hopefully, I believe that will happen with Massachusetts. It's over to them, and we'll wait to see what the result of that is.
Would you make Kamil Sokolowski's positive test for testosterone?
The most concerning thing is, when was it? You know, was it a year ago? Which was over a year ago? I don't know. Yeah. Did he fight on after that Fraser Clark fight? Yeah. That's the bigger problem. Is if someone, you know, the problem with that process is the length of period you get to get the results, right? But if he has failed a test after that fight, I feel like you have to go through some kind of process and not just carry on fighting, because otherwise you get back to a situation where obviously Conor Benn didn't fight, but under the Kamil Sokolowski situation, he would have kept fighting till they make a decision. So what, they make a decision a year on, you know? But, you know, I know, I think I had a really good chat the other day with someone from Team GB who was telling me, you're going to get more and more positive results, not just because fighters are cheating, but because fighters are not actually taking care of what they're putting into their body. And we actually need to work on the education side of that, because if you go into a gym and you ask the guy to put your protein into some blender over there that's made someone else's stuff, you can't be doing stuff like that. But fighters would do it because it's quite a standard thing to do. You eat here, eat there, you're taking supplements that aren't informed sport. You know, as a fighter, you've got to be so careful, and any fighter that's watching this, understand that if you fail a test, guilty or innocent, you're guilty in the eyes of everybody. So please be careful about what you're putting in your body, because you are going to get tested.
What have you made of some people commenting, suggesting that some fighters are living out silent bans?
I mean, I just had an interview there. I see one the other day. Craig Richards, who has had a hand injury for a year. Oh, I reckon he might be on a silent ban. I'll tell you this now. I've never had a fighter that has been banned by UKAD, right? And therefore, I've never had a fighter that is on a silent ban. Craig Richards, people talk about Felix Cash just because they're injured or been out of a fight. Absolute rubbish. And I'll tell you something now as well. If I have a fighter that is banned by UKAD and has to live out a ban, they need to make a statement to confirm that. And I would insist on that happening. I've never had a fighter that has lived out a ban from UKAD, or even I don't think I've had a fighter that's been found guilty from UKAD, to be honest with you. So I'm just checking that in my head, but no, and certainly never had a fighter that has been found guilty by UKAD and is under any kind of ban. So Twitter is full of bullshit and people saying what they want, and they can do, but at the end of the day, that is the truth. And I think any fighter that is banned by UKAD, I don't agree with the confidentiality of a decision like that, you know, or living out a ban. And I don't know how you live out a ban quietly, because Sokolowski's been found guilty. Tete was found guilty. So how is that confident? I don't know. What certain situations where UKAD say we won't announce this one, I don't believe that happens. So not in my stable at all.
Just a couple of topics before we wrap this up. Joshua Wilder dead in the water, or?
There's ongoing conversations at the moment in the Middle East for that fight. We want to make that fight. We're also in negotiations for a fight for Anthony Joshua in December. Because if he doesn't fight Wilder in January, I think he will fight in December. But we'll see what happens this week. That's not part of our big announcements this week, but I don't think it's too far away.
I was having a little think the other day, and when we last did an interview, I asked you about Abu Dhabi and why you hadn't been back. You said kind of the Conor Benn situation kind of prevented that for now. You mentioned to me as well that there's plans to put a big heavyweight fight on in December. Could that be AJ versus maybe one of Ruiz or Hrgović out in Abu Dhabi?
There's a very good chance that we will be in Abu Dhabi in December, but nothing confirmed yet, and we'll see how those conversations go over the next few days.
Big heavyweight fight involving Anthony Joshua in Abu Dhabi?
Maybe.
Eddie, I mean, yeah, that's kind of that for now. Anything you'd like to leave on?
No, just get ready for a big week. As I said, big announcement for us as a business tomorrow. Sonny Edwards against Bam, press conference tomorrow. You're going to love, of course, Conor Benn and Hitchens, Sandy Ryan and McCaskill. Huge fight night in Orlando on Saturday night. We're going to have a press conference early next week as well for Cameron against Taylor in Dublin. We're also going to have Bam and Sonny coming to the UK for a workout in London for fans on Wednesday. And then we've got Opetaya against Jordan Thompson next week. Plus we've got Wood Warrington the week after. We've got a huge US fight to announce this week as well. So just full of announcements and ready to rumble.
I'm sure you're going to be sick of seeing the sight of us by the end of, well yeah, exactly. See you tomorrow. We've got more talking to do, but thank you.